Preparing to live stream. This way I don't have to upload it at the end. This works. All right, and we are there. Start with the old school. These are love. And it brings love. It's a relationship together. You for me, we always friends. You. That's what we're talking about tonight on Friday Night Live with Dr. Kim. This is our first night here on YouTube Live. Woo! So we're doing something new tonight. Instead of me uploading the YouTube, followers get to join us live. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Friday Night Live with Dr. Kim. And tonight we're talking about long-lasting marriages. How do you do it? How is it done? Nobody better to ask than somebody who has done it, is doing it. So I have a very special guest with me tonight, and that is Dr. Aline Brown, who gave me permission to call her Aline tonight, and I'm going to do that. So I'm going to give her a moment to tell you a little bit about herself, and then we're going to dive in. You know, I got some stats that I'm going to share, and then we got questions, and I trust that she has answers. Okay, so Aline, tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself. Give us a context for our conversation tonight.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kim, for inviting me to this. I love talking about being married. So my name is Aline Brown. In December, this coming December, I will have been married 58 years. I have one daughter, 2 grandchildren. I'm a retired social worker. I enjoy reading, crafting. I would do a variety of things. So enough about me.
No, it's all about you.
Enough about me. All about you. I'd rather spend the time answering the questions and addressing the concerns. My husband and I also are very active in the married couples ministry at our church. And so we do this a lot. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we will be talking to the premarital counseling couples about their upcoming marriage and answering any questions and concerns they have. So we try to be helpful, because being married isn't easy.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So like you said, this is something you're used to doing. And I was glad. I said, when I put the call out and asked for, would anybody be willing to share, talk about marriage? And you were the first person to respond. And something I haven't had a chance to tell you, so I'll tell you now, that over the years, right, and starting out as a very young girl at Trinity United Church of Christ, Chicago, Illinois, 60628, my home church, when I started out there, I always, was just intrigued by you and your husband. I was just like, oh, they're just so couplish, and I was like, just solid. And so I just always respected you as a couple, everything about you, just what you represented. And so I was really honored that you would give us some of your time tonight, because I also know this about you, and that you're very honest. And I always like that you pull no punches, you straight to the point. So I know that you're gonna give us some advice that anybody Anybody could understand.
And can use.
And can use. All right. So 7%, I thought this was interesting that 7% of the current US population consists of couples who have been married for more than 50 years. And out of the couples that were married over 50 years ago, 49.8% of them are still married. So it's interesting that it still follows the same statistics that we know about marriage and divorce, that it's about a 50-50. But what I wanted to do tonight is say, well, let's focus on the folks who made it happen. Who were the folks that were successful and how did they happen to do that? So one of the questions that came up in the group, Love and Life According to Dr. Kim, I know the YouTube people don't know about that. But on Facebook, there's a group of us about 2,000 strong that talk about love and life and relationships on a daily. And so some of these questions have come from the ladies in that group. And the first one that they wanted to know is, what is it that you can do or have done to keep marriage fresh and exciting?
I would say that you have to keep
uh-oh, she was here and now she's gone. Oh my gosh. I should be back in a moment. She said, first thing you have to do is, because they really want to know. I mean, 58 years is a really long time, right? Over 50 years. For some people, 5 years is a long time, right? So that was definitely one of the pressing questions. How in the world do you do this and not get bored? Still want to show up with the same person every day? We're going to give it 1 minute and see if I can find my guest. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. She'll be back. So we had that question. If you have any questions, put them in the chat so I can ask. Who's here? Say hi if you're here, so I know who we're talking to. Let us know what you want to know from my guest. There she is. We're having a good time with these computers tonight, aren't we?
Computers are driving me crazy today. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
So I would say that one of the first things you have to do is keep reintroducing yourselves to one another, if that makes sense. Because you keep changing. One of the things we find all the time when we're working with young couples is that one or the other will say, well, he's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're supposed to. I was 18 years old when I married. I am now 76.
All right.
I'm not supposed to be acting like I acted when I was 18.
I wouldn't think so.
It would be a sad state of affairs.
There.
So you change at different stages. You know, you become different people, and so you have to keep reintroducing yourself to the new person and making the adjustments that you have to make for that person. And there are going to be obstacles. There are going to be challenges, but what we have always said is we are committed to our marriage. We are committed to doing whatever it takes to make our marriage work. And so that makes you do something a little different than, because it's easy to break a commitment to a person. If you're committed to your marriage as an entity.
I get it.
Then you work a little harder. So that's what I would say. Keep reintroducing keep learning the new person that you're with.
So that means you got to pay attention.
Absolutely.
You got to pay attention to what's going on with them.
And get all the help you need. Now, we go to therapy probably every 10 to 12 years.
Nice.
Because we're different people. And so he has to learn who this new person is. I have to figure out who he is and how I'm going to make it with that new person. So always get the help you need. So we're never shy about going to counseling. And we really have found that every 10 to 12 years is necessary for somebody to help us navigate the next stage.
Okay, get a tune up. Get a tune up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I hadn't thought about it like that, but
to every 100,000 miles.
yeah.
You know, the other thing I heard you say that I thought was interesting is you said a commitment to the entity of the marriage. So not just other, but saying what we need to do to make this work. And I know that's something that that my mother has shared with me over the years. That, and I'm meant to say, the folks who were showing up to see her tonight, some of her students were going to come in. She's down with a cold tonight. So, Mommy, if you're watching, I hope you feel better.
Oh, she feels
we'll be looking for you to come back another time. But one thing that she shared with me over the years is that there's always a reason, right? You can always come up with a reason, right? To let go, like you said, to break up. But that's the first and most important thing. And it sounds like what you're saying is saying that there's not going to be an exit clause.
Right.
We're not going to say, now, if you do this, then I'm gone. It's like, well, if this happens, what are we going to do?
So what you're looking for are the reasons to stay.
Exactly. So what do we need to do to make it work? So paying attention to each other, finding out what's changed about this person. Like, so what makes them tick now that made them tick before? So you talked about counseling, which, you know, I'm definitely a proponent of that. One of the questions was your husband always, was it easy for him to share openly, or is that something that evolved over time?
Pass me that mouse.
Well, he's here asking me for something.
Tag him in.
The mouse, the black mouse sitting right there. Second shelf.
Okay. He evolved. I think that's kind of normal for Black men. And especially men in my husband's generation, because they were like, you know, big, strong men don't cry, you know, they got it all together at all times. And so, and which is extremely harmful to them, because it makes them deny their emotional side. And they do have an emotional side, but they are taught to deny it. So they don't know that it's okay. So yes, I think it's something they evolved to, and it's difficult for us because we're emotional creatures. Yes. So we're not understanding this man who doesn't understand us. While we're emotional in a setting, you know, he's looking at me like, well, what, you know, and I'm looking at him like, well, why aren't you doing what I'm doing? So it really takes an understanding on both parts that, number one, we're never going to be the same, that we're just wired differently. You know, Reverend Lance Watson's sermon, men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. You ever heard that sermon?
No.
Oh, they use it, I understand, in the premarital counseling class. And he talks about the fact that, and you know, his background was psychiatry, mental health before he went into ministry. He talks about the fact that waffles, you know, have those little pockets, just little individual pockets. Spaghetti is just all intertwined. And that's how we are. Women are, everything connects to us. Men are in a pocket. They watching a ball game. That's what they're doing. They're not thinking about nothing else. You know, we're cooking. We're thinking about, oh, when I finish this, got to do the laundry. And then, oh yeah, and I forgot I didn't pick up so-and-so, and I got to get the kids ready for school tomorrow. Men don't do that. And so we have to start to understand that because we're wired differently, we're going to approach situations differently. But we also have to understand that it's okay to cross over.
Okay, say more. It's okay to cross over.
Men can cross over. So I distinctly remember the first time I saw my husband cry. It was we had only been married a couple of years, and one of his very best friends, her father died. And this man had been like a father. He was raised in a single family home, just his mom. And this man had been like a father to him, mentored him, you know. And so the man died, and I attended the funeral with him. And he was crying, and I was looking at him like, no, this man ain't sitting here crying in this church with all these people around, right? So, which shows you how limiting I was. But now he'll cry like that. And I love it about him because he's no longer ashamed to show that he feels. And so, yes, I think we have to wait for him. But hopefully, as we raise our younger boys, we will raise them to know that it's okay to have an emotional side. So it won't be so difficult for the younger women to cope with that side of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no shame involved. It doesn't
no shame at all. We tease them all the time because sometimes we're just having discussions and he gets so full, we just pass him a box of tissue. Go ahead, because we know he's getting ready to cry. Okay.
And do what you need to do. Okay?
Do what you need to do. And even the men in the married couples ministry, they say all the time that they call him Baba Rudy, that he has freed them up. Because he'll sit in a married couples meeting and cry. And they said he freed them up to know that it's okay to do it. If Baba can do it, we could do it.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, it makes you no less a man. In fact, like I said, it makes you more of a man, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're being your full self. You're not hiding any parts of yourself. But I would imagine, too, that came with trust. That came with trust. When somebody knows you're not going to throw that in my face, you know, and this is a safe place for me to be myself, then you can. So like I said, that happens over time. So I hope that answered their question. What do you think was the biggest challenge you all have had, and how did you overcome that? What would you say is the biggest challenge?
Probably the biggest challenge for us just happened in the last 10, 12 years. When my daughter was officially diagnosed as living with bipolar disorder, and we had to have her hospitalized in mental health, in a mental clinic, whatever you want to call them. It was a very, I don't even know the right word to use, and I'm a word person, but it was very stressful. But what we found is it really made our relationship stronger.
Wow.
Because all we had was each other. And we needed to get through this. We needed to do whatever we needed to do to, one, get my daughter healthy again. Or if that weren't possible, we were going to have to take her children and raise her children. It impacted us so much that we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. So we've had a lot of challenges along the way, lost jobs, the loss of our first two children. Tiffany is actually our third child. Our first one only lived for 32 days, and the second one was stillborn. So the loss of our babies was bad. But that having to take your child to mental health hospital and have her admitted is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my entire life.
Yes, Lord.
But I thank God that a foundation had been laid so that we knew that our only hope was each other.
You could lean in.
We could lean in, and that's exactly what we did. We worked hard together. We made game plans, and we had to have her admitted twice. It wasn't just one time. We had to have her admitted twice. But over the long haul, it has made our whole family stronger.
Look at God. That's amazing. That is amazing. That's something that tears a lot of families apart.
It absolutely does. And because I was diagnosed with a mental health issue about 20 years ago. I live with chronic depression. And so this is the one thing that is exceptional about my husband. when I was diagnosed, and I was very ashamed because I'm a social worker. And I'm like, how am I going to work with people that I'm crazy myself? Okay, they ain't going to believe me. Okay. So I questioned my being. I questioned my profession. I questioned God. I just questioned everybody. This can't be happening to me. And I even told my husband, if you tell anybody that I have this, I'm going to stop taking my medication. Like that was going to hurt him, right? So, but anyway, that's how crazy I was.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear you.
So, but when I was diagnosed, he did everything. He started reading and researching. He did everything he needed to do to find out how to help me live with it, and then how to help our relationship continue. When Tiffany was diagnosed, he did exactly the same thing. So he is always committed to doing whatever it takes to make sure his family is okay. And so that's sort of, those challenges, we can meet them together because we're prepared. We've prepared ourselves over the years. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. Like you said, that's definitely a huge, huge challenge. And like you said, you talked about how do we get it? We came in together. And then, like you said, with him leading with that, well, let's find out. I need to find out what this is so we know what to do.
And he's still today
ignorant. Yeah.
He watches, because I've been off medication now. I determined that I wanted to live my life without medication. Mm-hmm. So that's a challenge in and of itself. And I know that. But he knows when I'm in crisis, even when I don't. Wow. And he will say to me, okay, you're slipping. This is what we need to do. And so he's there to bring me back up out of whatever hell I'm in at the time.
Wow. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. That's oneness. Most definitely, isn't it? Isn't it? I can feel this before you know what's going on with you.
And I trust him.
There's that trust again. How did you all decide what kind of marriage you were going to have? Is that something like you talked about at the beginning? Like, I want a partnership, or I want us to be friends, or I want things to be equal. Or did you see any models of marriage that you were like, we should be something like them, or let's borrow from them? How did you all?
The only model of marriage, or I won't say the only one, but of course, my primary one was my parents, who stayed married until my mom died. They've been married, I think, 56 years when she died. Wow. He came out of a single family household. He's never known his mother. His mother had been married before he was born, but not to his father. Okay. So he'd never known his mother to be married. And some of the relationships he'd seen were very volatile, a lot of cussing, fussing, fighting, arguing. I had never seen that. My mother, in fact, it was harmful at some point, because my mother truly believed that the child, because I'm an only child, should never see the parents having an argument or disagreeing. And so I really believe that, you married, you love each other, you live happily ever, ever. Everything is all rosy. The first time we had a disagreement, I fell apart because I didn't know how to handle it. And so I spent maybe the first 5 to 6 years acquiescing. Yes, dear, because I needed us not to fuss and fight, because if we did, that meant we didn't love each other, And then I worried myself into ill health. And so I went to the doctor, and they gave me all these tests and everything. He said, well, it sounds like, you're pre-ulcerous. And I'm like, I'm too young to have an ulcer. I'm just 25 years old. He said, well, something is worrying you, and so I started examining things in my life, and I realized it was him. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot. And so I had to learn that it was okay for us to disagree, because I never knew that before. And what I discovered, that was our first round of counseling. What I discovered was he was resentful that I was always making him make decisions. He wanted a partner. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to just go along with him because he's the man of the house. And so it was a very interesting dynamic. So once we figured that out, maybe that was the biggest challenge. we learned how to, even when we disagree on stuff, we have many topics where we agree to disagree. We're never going to agree on them. So there's no need to continue to talk about them, discuss them, argue about them. You're going to feel like that. I'm going to feel like this. And it's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. So having a plan for the marriage, absolutely not. I was 18 years old. I got pregnant. In my day, when you got pregnant, you fixed it by getting married.
Absolutely.
So the one thing I must say, however, is that I had been kind of choicy. You know, I wasn't just sleeping around. He was really the first person I had a real sexual relationship with. And so I got pregnant. I decided I wasn't going to marry him. I was going to, buck the norm because I was really concerned that he was only marrying me because I was pregnant. And I didn't want that. I wanted him to marry me because maybe we would marry anyway, but now we just were speeding it up a little bit. So I said, no, I wasn't going to marry him. And my mother was okay with that. She was kind of forward thinking. My father almost had a stroke. Like, what?
I can imagine.
Right.
From a 1964.
This was
You're not gonna marry. You're not gonna marry.
1964. Yeah, you what? That didn't happen. So in any case, we finally talked it through. He said yes, so we really wanted to get married. But we were young. I was 18. He was 23. We didn't know anything about what it was. And then that's our firstborn that didn't live. And so I was like, well, do you want to stay married? The baby died. We was like, yeah, we're going to stay married and we're going to do blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so we really just sort of figured it out as we went along. Would I recommend that? Absolutely not. I think there are some things you need to talk about. There's some values that need to be set. There's some goals that need to be talked about. But I didn't know. It's by the grace of God that I'm still with this man, but it must have been the man that I'm supposed to be with. That's all I could say.
Okay, that's good. So that you taking me somewhere. So what are those things? So what are some of those values and goals and things that you think people should set at the beginning so they are starting off towards success?
I think you need to talk about how you're going to handle finances. Because we find that that's always a big issue. How are you going to handle finances? Now, because we married and we were still students.
Okay.
And so he was making $1.05 an hour and I was making 85 cents an hour. We were working 24 hours a week. Okay.
Wow.
So we had no choice but to put our money together because otherwise we wouldn't have anything. And we still put our money together. I believe that that's the way. If we're together, and we're supposed to be working together. But I understand there's some cases where that doesn't work for everyone. Second marriages where, I've acquired property or something like that. I'm not ready to share all of that. And then we get stuff together. But I think those are things you need to talk about. You need to talk about how we're going to handle money. You need to talk about Christian values. My daughter married a guy who was raised in a Jehovah's Witness home. I didn't think that was going to work from the very beginning, but she said they was in love or whatever they was in, right? But the values were just so different. Like when we were getting ready for the wedding, she said she couldn't come because, they can't go into another church. And so they wanted us to have it at a hall or something. Tiffany was raised in Trinity Church. I said, well, she gonna miss it. She gonna have to watch the video because we having it at the church. I don't know what to tell you. He didn't want to have the Wesley dedicated. What are you saying? God won't bless the baby? That's not what we're saying. We're asking God to bless the baby. It was just all kind of. So you need to talk about those things. You need to talk about goals. Where I want to be in 5, what do we want to do and how we're going to accomplish it. We still talk about goals. We have travel goals. Okay, we want to do that. So what? We got to not do this and put some money over here and put some money over there so we can do. So you need to talk about it. I think those are some of the basics. And you mentioned it earlier, trust. To me, trust is number one in any relationship. marriage, friendship,
Mhm.
of siblings, any relationship you have to trust that person. I trust that every decision he makes, and he's made some bad ones, haven't we all?
Yes.
But he makes them for the good of his family.
Hmm.
So I don't have a problem I don't do anything that has to do with money. I hate handling money. It's not, I did it for maybe the first 30 years. I was the money keeper. Then when he retired, I was like, shit, you ain't got nothing else to do. You might as well. So I turned it over to him.
Here on the bank book, huh?
Right, here's everything. And he loves it. So I don't have any problem with him doing it because I know he's going to take care of our business. He's going to make sure we're good financially. He's going to make sure the bills are paid. And if I want to do something, he's going to make sure I got the money to do it.
Look at that. So trust. That's a lot of trust there. And then change, right? Because like you said, something changed. Okay, so I did this for a long time, but now something else has changed. So guess what? We could change this too. So adaptability, changing roles, changing, in response to the things that are changing in our lives. That's great stuff. That's everything. Is he saying something that we need to hear?
No, this big old calendar you want. I'm in his office, so I have to.
Oh, goodness.
On the third.
Thank you for letting us. Thank you for letting us rent your space.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in his space, so I have to allow for these little interruptions.
I'm done.
He said he's done.
Thank you so much. that was our commercial break.
That was our commercial break, right?
But that's good. That's good stuff. That you're saying that change, like I said, change, adaptability, but trust, like I said, trust keeps coming up. Respect keeps coming up as well, right? You're saying that you respect those qualities that he has. And
all of them didn't come right away. Like I talked about earlier, all of them didn't come right away. There was an evolution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what we've found is now that we're older, especially, I'm 76, he's 81. We don't have as much time left with one another as we've spent.
Ooh, that's heavy.
And so we have determined that we're not going to spend these last whatever few years God still grants us doing anything but what makes us happy.
That's rich. That's rich. I think everybody needs to consider that. I've seen people much younger, and I've said that too. I've seen couples that dated for years and get married and have a few months together.
Mm-hmm.
A year together. You don't know how long you have. So like you said, the time that we spend, it should be.
It's good time.
Yeah.
Even when we're not getting along, it's good time. Because we don't even fuss anymore. We just say, okay, I didn't like what you did, or I don't like what you said. And then we just move on. Just move on. That's over. That's done with. And let's move on to something else.
Done with it. What's something that got on your nerves in your 20s that, like you said, is inconsequential now? What's something that you used to be like, oh my gosh, and now you're just like, it's whatever.
It's a little bitty thing. And it's always something real. Now, one thing that still sends me over the top is he doesn't put the toilet seat down. But it's not going to happen. I've been married to him for almost 58 years and it still ain't happened. So why keep getting my panties in a bunch about it? So I just put it down. It's okay.
That was one of the things I told somebody. I said, if I do this again, I spend a lot of energy. Oh my God, you just want me to fall in, don't you? It's like, you just
if I pass by the bathroom, the seat is up, I just put it down and just keep moving because it's not going to change. But I also have to recognize there's some habits of mine that completely send him over the top that I'm not going to change. Mm. And so he puts up with me. I always call him God's example of unconditional love on earth. Because he loves me unconditionally, just like God, despite all my faults. Because I got some faults and some shortcomings, okay? I like to think I was the it, but I ain't.
You said, I'm good, but
I ain't. and he accepts it. And so I have to extend to him the same grace that God extends to me.
Yes, that's so key. But you know what I hear you saying, and I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper there. I hear you talking about habit versus character. And that's a big difference. And I
That's
say
a big difference.
when they're going in, it's like I said, me picking my nose is not the same as me lying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, leaving the toilet seat up is not the same as you not being a person of your word. So, you know, I think we need to learn, like I said, to accept some bad habits that we have. But if it's character, you got to call it out and deal with it.
And we even have to accept some character flaws because we all have some. And so, I mean, he got a few. Yeah, I wish he would change. But it doesn't make him a bad person. He's a good person with a few character flaws. And so am I. And that's what I'm saying. You have to just look at when I talk to younger women, I use this analogy. You going to buy a car. So you go to and you got a whole list. Well, of course, now a lot of these things come standard, but I want air conditioning, I want power windows, I want this, I wanted that, I wanted tinted windows, I want driver, you want everything. And the man tells you, okay, you can get all that, but it costs $75,000. And you're like, well, maybe, okay, well, let's see if I take away this and I take away this. Okay, well, now you're down to 50. Well, I still ain't got 50. I got 40 maybe. So you're going to look and see what you can live without.
Yes.
That's it within your budget. And it's the same thing with your relationships, I think. There are certain things that are your core values, and they're different for everyone. If that person meets your basic core values, it's okay. If you're expecting one person to be everything to you, then you're never going to be happy.
Okay.
There's no one person on earth that can fit all of that. So you have to decide what's the most important thing to you. He meets my basic core values. We are different on quite a few things. But basically, when we get down to what's really important for our family, you know, for where we're going, we're on the same page. So on those few things where he's reading a whole different book, go ahead and read that book.
Okay. I would think that would make it interesting. I would tell people, how boring would that be to be married to your twin?
Right.
You know, we think exactly alike. We say all the same thing. We say, who wants to do that? I want another me.
And sometimes it opens you up to different things. You know, I've done some things with him that I wouldn't have thought about that I really enjoyed, and vice versa. He tells me that, well, I really didn't want to go, but I had a good time, you know. So it really keeps you going. We're always looking for that. We still have date nights. So we last week we went to the movies. We had sort of let them slide. And then part of the married couples ministry, we're each in prayer groups. And so our challenge in our prayer group Sunday before last was to let's reconnect. We know COVID had a lot to do with it, but sometimes you just sort of let things go, right? And that we all needed to reconnect and have a dedicated date night, not just happenstance. This is our date night. This is it. And so last week we went to the movies. We went to see The Woman King. Terrific. Last night we went out to dinner. I mean, you know, so we make deliberate time for one another because it's easy to, you know, he's doing this, I'm doing that, you know, hey. And even when we're in the house, because I'm an only child, he had one sister who he wasn't really close to. So he spends a long time. I'm accustomed to being alone. Tiffany is she's an only child. And so we will be here in the house and have to call each other on the phone because he's in the basement. I'm on the second floor, right? What you want for dinner? Yeah. So we have to stop and say, let's get together. Let's do this, you know. So I think you just have to work at finding out what's important to you. And if those core values are okay, then some of that other stuff, you ain't gonna get it.
Okay.
Because you get the other stuff and then maybe not get the core values in another man. So
Okay.
you got to decide what's important to you.
Been there, done that.
Okay.
on that date night, let me go back to the date night before I move on to this other question, which I thought was an interesting one. But the date night, do you have any rules about date night? Like that we stand in the moment. We're not talking about bills. We're not talking about the kids. We're just enjoying each other's
We're
company.
just enjoying each other. We just like when we go to the movies, we'll generally go to the movies and stop and have something to eat. And we're just chit-chatting about a little bit. I mean, every time, occasionally something will come up about the kids, but it's not, that in-depth, that kind of thing. It's just like, he'll say, oh, I talked to Wesley and Wesley's blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's good. That kind of thing. But no, it's time for us to spend with each other so that we can stay connected, because it's so easy to disconnect from your spouse, because we're all, like when he was working, he over there, I'm over here doing this. When we come home, I'm doing the family thing. And a very critical time is when your children leave home, because suddenly, your empty nest. When Tiffany went away to college, I was like, are we going to stay together? Because I realized so much of what we did centered around the child. We didn't know each other anymore. I'm like, who is this man?
Change.
Yeah, change. And so we went to and he was like, no, we're not. Because he always tell me, that's the first thing you say is, do we stay together? Yeah, we gonna stay together. And so we went to therapy. That was another time we went to therapy and worked on what we needed to work on to help us reconnect as these different people. We were totally
different circumstances.
Yeah, as these different people. Who is he? Who is she? How are we going to fix this together? So, yeah.
That's good. And I would say that you hit a question I have to ask is, how do children change their relationship? And like I said, coming in, but also like I said, exiting. And
Absolutely.
That's a big one. That's a big one that I'm talking to a lot of people about, that empty nesting.
Empty nesting. And so I tell people to try to use it as a time. As a matter of fact, I just had a similar discussion with Mrs. Moss, because the both kids are gone. And she was like, Mama, it's just, I said, I know you don't know what to do with yourself. I said, take off your clothes and run around the house naked. Shit, you could do anything now.
Okay.
I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that. But what I'm saying is, it's a time for reconnecting, reestablishing, and maybe doing some things you haven't done for the last 20 years because you had kids in the house.
Going back to those goals. And then we said we were going to do that we haven't done.
Go back.
There's no reason why we can't.
Yeah, because she left. I said, girl, take off your clothes, run around the house, do the naked. Y'all can do it anyway. Okay. And she was like, Mama, I don't even know why I talk to you. I'm like, because you talk to me because you know I'm going to break it down like it is.
You're going to tell her the truth.
Right. But that's a good time to reconnect with one another and meet each other again, because you're two different people. For the last 18, 20 years, you've been concerned about, you can't make any decision that doesn't consider those children.
Yes. And
so now they're gone. I mean, not gone, because you're still, but they're not there.
Not for the daily. Like you said,
not for the daily. And now it's like, wow, I really got some time for me. I mean, for us, what do we want to do? Where do we want to go? My husband and I realized we hadn't been out for real, just the two of us, in years, because it was always family night. It's always family night. So now we went out, we're sitting there like, okay, what do we talk about now? We didn't know each other.
Wow. We
didn't know each other. He was doing things and interested in things that I knew nothing about, and vice versa. So we had to meet again.
Wow. Is there anything, you think it's any way to avoid that? Do you think it's any way that
I do think
kids now could avoid that?
Yes. And that is, have a dedicated date night. Find a babysitter. Find, if you're lucky enough to have parents or, relatives, take them there, do whatever you have to do, but make sure you have at least one day a week for each other. But we don't. We've sacrificed our lives for our children. And I'm saying that, I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, a girl I graduated from high school with, she said, it's like getting your life back. But we didn't know it was gone.
See? You don't until you get there.
We thought we were living, but we weren't. You know, we driving kids, you know, Tiffany was on the cheer squad at Trinity. And so they had games on Friday night. So I was going to games. I don't even like basketball. I was going to game. And, you know, I'd have to pick her, get her. And then it was like 6 other kids that needed rides. And I'm gonna let them. And so I would have a car full of kids. I had a little Chevrolet Celebrity. And I came home one night and I said to Rudolph, I said, do you know that Celebrity will hold 8 teenagers and a driver? And he was like, how'd you do that?
I know, right?
He said, how'd you do that? They got in the car. They were laying across it. They were stacked like sardines in the car. And I kept, Lord, don't let nothing happen. If we'd had an accident, it'd have been all on the news.
Ooh, okay.
But that was my weekends. You know, it was what she was going to do, what she needed, you know, make sure that the kid was all right. And so you don't realize that you have really given up your life. So I think along the way, and so we tell these young couples with young kids, get a babysitter at least one night a week and go, just the 2 of you. Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself at a crossroads when the rubber meets the road.
So those kids will live and not die. I know that.
Yes, they will.
As a parent, and I've talked to some friends of mine about that. I said, I wish I had known earlier that it was okay for me to take me time.
Yes.
So like you said, you know, as a single entity in a relationship, right? But then also as a couple, and say and know that I don't, even though I'm on call 24/7, I can take a break. Yeah, the world is not going to fall apart. And maybe if I take these breaks, I won't fall apart, right? As often as I'm doing.
I had some me time. It was the one night a week when her father was totally responsible for her in terms of getting her dinner, you know, getting their dinner, getting her homework finished, getting her to bed, all of that. And I could be at home, but she couldn't ask me anything because it was mommy's me time. But that was different from our us time.
Correct.
And so that's what I failed to do, for us to have us time. I have too much me time, too much.
You said you're going to get that.
I had too much me time. I really did. And
that almost cost me.
It almost cost me my marriage, my me time.
Wow. So because you were having too much fun by yourself.
Lord.
You're like, I'm good.
My girlfriend and I tell our kids, if you see us all sitting and rocking on the porch like this, don't feel sorry for us because we had our fun.
You said we're okay.
We're okay if we never do anything else.
I heard that. So going and you talked about sharing a lot with folks who are planning to get married. Is your advice any different when you're talking to people in their 20s versus their 40s versus their 60s? That's the question.
Yes, I think it has to be, because each of those are a different life stage, which means we're thinking about different things. We're wanting different things. A person in their 60s, they're probably nearing retirement. And so what they're looking for is they're looking more for companionship, friendship, somebody to, go do, be with, travel with. They're looking for something entirely different than a person in their 20s who wants to start a family, who's early in their career, their goals. And then by the time you reach 40 and you've learned more who you are, because I'm convinced at 20 years old, we don't know who we are. We don't.
No.
You were just struggling around thinking we know stuff. You don't really figure that out till 40, 45, that you really,
at least,
and that you really know who you are, and not just know who you are, start to like who you are.
Oh, that's super important. Super important. Why is that? Why do you feel that's so important?
Because if you don't like who you are, you spend too much time trying to be who you think someone wants you to be, or what they need you to be. And so you never quite turn into who God intended you to be. I remember that distinctly, and I said it all the time. In my 20s, I was still so concerned about not disappointing, not my husband, my parents.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Still
indeed.
what they expected from me. Because my father, who, from the rural South, never had a chance to finish school. That was so important to him, that I finish school, that I get a college degree, blah, 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 blah. And so I was still struggling, even though that wasn't what I wanted to do at that time. I was still struggling with disappointing my parents, and so that was a struggle. And then at the same time, then I had this husband who had some expectations, and I wasn't quite sure what he expected. But, so I'm getting all of these mixed images. So it wasn't until, I'm going to say, at least 40 and a little over that I looked and I said, you know what? You're not a bad person, just being who you are. And I started being Arlene. And people had to accept who I was.
And saying, if you don't.
And if you don't, I'm not likely to change. This is it. This is what you see is what you get. I always tell people I'm a WYSIWYG woman. What you see is what you get.
That's good. I never knew an acronym for it. I love it. I love it. So what about folks getting married 50s and 60s?
I think that's okay if that's what you want. Here's the one thing I always say. It probably won't happen now, but I would probably always be married. I love being married. And maybe that's because I've been blessed with a good husband, a good relationship. That's not to say we haven't had our rough times. We've been separated a couple of times early on, way back. I love the companionship. I love knowing that he's here. I love knowing that he's going to be here for me. I love that I can depend on him. I love everything about that. Now, does that mean I would find that in another man? I do not know. Probably not, because my mother used to tell me all the time, stay with him because ain't nobody else going to put up with you. Oh, and I said, oh, mama, that's a terrible thing to say about your only child. And she was like, yeah, well, that's why I could say that. And she might be right. She might be right.
I mean, that's true. I've always said that. You got to find that person who is willing, to deal with your stuff, to unpack your baggage. And everybody's not equipped to do it. That's right.
Everybody's got some baggage.
Absolutely.
Because I know there are certain things that I'm not going to do, certain expectations that I have that he meets because he's been with me so long and he knows, okay, it ain't even worth talking about, right? But maybe another man would come in and he says the same thing. Like he said one day, my husband has a lot of women friends. Okay. Always has. I am not intimidated by that. I don't feel jealous because every dime he makes, he brings home to me. So whatever, it don't even matter to me. And so, and I don't know if it's because he was raised in a single family, just his mom and his sister. Then he married and had a daughter. So he's with two women. The only time he ever lived with a man was when my father moved in with us after my mother died. Then my dad died. So now Tiffany's here and the granddaughter's here. So once again, he's living with women and he gets along well with women. But a lady approached him at the Trinity United Church of Christ one day and said to him, you should be glad you married to who you married to, because if you was married to me, I wouldn't let you be having all these women friends.
Oh, my.
And he said, well, that's why I ain't married to you, right? And
that's a good answer.
That's why. But he knows there are a lot of women who couldn't tolerate him having all those female relationships, So he would probably never marry again because ain't no other woman gonna put up with him having all these other women friends. Even my good friends, my sister girlfriends, if they need something, they call him. They don't call me and say, Aline, can Rudolph do so and so? They call him directly. This is broke. Do you know the name of this? Can you come over and look at this? And that's the relationship he has. And I trust that it's just what it is.
Trust. What made you choose him?
Girl, I do.
You talked about the pregnancy. We know that. But initially, before that, when you said, okay, out of all the people that you were seeing on the campus and folks who were
when I tell you this, you're gonna When I tell you this, you're going to feel sorry for me because I feel sorry for myself. So I'm this sheltered only child.
Mhm.
My mother lost one child before me and 4 after me.
Oh my, my.
Only child they could carry the term. She could carry the term, which is why I'm named Aline. My father's name was Alan. She just put an AE on it. Then when I was born, she had a feeling she'd never have any more children. And of course she didn't. So here you got this. I had just turned 17 3 weeks before graduation. My parents didn't believe that I could date until I was 16. So now I spent my whole senior year not dating, not doing anything because my parents wouldn't let me do it. So I'm socially inept. I went to prom with my cousin. I went to junior prom with my cousin. Okay.
Okay.
I never really had a boyfriend. Never really been away from home. My mother wouldn't let me be in the scouts because a bear might come out of the woods and drag me away. I couldn't get my ears pierced because I might get an infection and die. I don't know how to swim because she thought I would drown. I don't know how to ride a bike because I would fall and break my leg. I don't know how to skate. So when I'm telling you, you're looking at the protected child. So now,
right.
This child that you've protected and haven't allowed to go anywhere and do anything, they took me 350 miles away from home and left me and on the campus of Southern Illinois University. What? So I know absolutely nothing.
Lord.
So I get on campus.
Mm-hmm.
I check into my dorm and I met a girl who's still my good friend. And she said, oh, we go to this place to get something to eat on Sunday night because meal service hadn't started in the dorm yet. So I walk over there. I've been on campus 2 hours. I walk over there with her. And he asked me to dance. He was the first boy that spoke to me on the campus of Southern Illinois University. And the rest, as they say, is history.
It's history. Asked you to dance. So you dance with him.
I danced with him. And we had this little innocuous conversation. And then the next day he came to the dorm and I think we went for a walk or something like that. Well, he had the reputation of being the worst boy on campus.
Worse than?
Worst, horrible, terrible person. So when my house mother found out that I was going out with him, she called my parents. And she said, Mr. and Mrs. Crabb, I know Aline is a nice girl. She's raised right and everything, but she's taken up with the worst boy on campus. And I'm really worried about her. So my parents got on the train and came back down there to see this worst boy on campus, right? So they met him. We went out for dinner. It was a little, it was more than a cafeteria, a little restaurant, like right by the train station. Mm-hmm. So they were going to get back on the train to come back to Chicago. And so we went out to dinner. They took us out to dinner. And so we're sitting there having this dinner, right? And so my mother looks across the table and she says to her, are you sleeping with my daughter? Now, remember, I'm only 17 years old and I only been away from home a few months. And he was like, no, man, no, man. My mother was kind of straightforward too, right?
I see.
Right. So, when I called her 6 or 7 months later and told her I was pregnant, she said, I know it's that Rudolph. It's that Rudolph, right? So there you go. So,
I know when I saw
him. But she loved him like a son, and he was so crazy about her until they were inseparable.
So how did they get past that? How did that relationship get so close?
Because he trusted her. He trusted that when he needed somebody to talk to, she was going to give him the best advice because it was the best advice, not because I was her daughter.
Okay.
And because I remember one time I called her and I said, so-and-so. So she said, well, you're wrong. And I said, I'm wrong. I said, I'm your daughter. She said, I don't even care. You're still wrong. And that's what she would do. So he trusted her that she was going to tell him the right thing all the time. If he was wrong, she was going to say it because he was wrong, not because I was the daughter. And if he was right, she was going to say, you right, and Aline is wrong. So they were so close. In fact, his mother told people that he was no longer her son. He was my mother's son.
Wow. Now
Ain't
that's
that
an
deep?
interesting concept.
Ain't
Wow.
that deep? That's just how close they were.
Ooh. And that whole dynamic, that's support, right, in itself. Affirmation in itself. I mean, there's so much security and trust again.
Trust.
Wow.
So I don't know. At 18 years, like I said, I was 17 when I started dating him. I was 18 when I married him. I didn't know anything about what marriage was, what you look for. We were still in school. I just thought it was kind of cool. After we go to the parties, we went home together. Okay.
So I ain't got worried.
Right.
Who I'm a dance with, who I'm leaving with.
The other girls, they had to go to their dorm. The boys went to their dorm. We was going home together. I'm like, I get to sleep with him legally. Okay. Just silly stuff. I mean, so it took a while. It took a while before I really knew what we were talking about being married.
It just seemed like everything was so much easier then. And I don't know whether, like I said, it's hindsight or just, us being nostalgic, but I've heard other stories similar to yours. It's like, well, I don't know. We just kind of met and things worked out and the rest is history. And it's interesting, those of us, I married when I was 20 the first time. And so it's kind of that same thing. It's like, well, I kind of liked it at him and then he finally liked it at me.
Right.
And we dated and we went on. And so it wasn't this whole process that there is now, entering the dating scene again at 40 something years old. And I find out, there's levels and layers to this that didn't exist in the 80s. And so, you have a vetting process and then people are like, so just because we spend every weekend together and talk to each other every day, that doesn't mean that we're dating. It's wild. So one of the questions is, they're trying to get, is it even possible, right? Is it even possible to have a long, successful marriage in this era, the way things are? And if so, like, how do you think people need to approach getting married, given all of the things that are kind of going on in society that were not 40, 50 years ago?
I'm not even sure I'm qualified to answer that because I'm still viewing it from 70 plus year eyes. Mm-hmm. And so often, a lot of times, people in my age group are very conflicted. We live in a world that we don't understand, but we have to navigate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because we don't understand some of the dating mores and some of the, the way people act and what they're doing. And we don't know about that at all because that's not what we did. And I'm not sure we can. So we're always conflicted, living in a world that we don't understand, but you have to navigate it. And so we're constantly having to make adjustments to not necessarily how we think, but how we operate. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm not sure a person in my age group can answer that because obviously some of the things that I see and hear from young women, I'm like, absolutely not. But if I were trying to find a man in this time, and if this is what exists, I would have to do that, I guess.
What are some of those things? Can you think of something?
I mean, I just think, I don't think men are as respectful toward their women. I think they don't treat them quite like I think women ought to be treated. The way I hear them talk I was standing outside Kenwood Church today, and a man and woman, obviously in a relationship, were having a heated discussion.
In front of the church.
Not only in front of church, but right across the street from a school with children playing in the playground, right? And he was calling her all kind of bitches and hoes and stuff. I mean, and she was like, and you know, well, you saw so, and I'm like, ain't no way.
It's trading it back and forth.
I can't live like that. But I see young women are doing more and more things for men that don't require them to be men. So where do you, and I'm not talking about opening doors and all that, you know, I can open my own door. I can do all that. I'm talking about taking care of me, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. And I mean, you know, there are a whole lot of layers that go into that. And I just don't see it anymore. And so when I look at these relationships, I always say, I'm so glad I'm not dating right now, because
okay.
I guess I would be single. So I'm not prepared to answer that, because I know you all have to do something different. And I would really like to know from your group, what sacrifices you feel you're having to make in order to have a relationship, because I know you must be giving up something, and how difficult that must be for you. You know, I would love to hear that. You know, that's part of my social work thing. I'm always trying to see how how people navigate the world we live in.
It's a huge, like I said, a huge I would say mindset shift, whole paradigm shift of what that looks like. I think probably the biggest thing I've heard women 40, 50-ish, and I wish people would talk to me in the chat. They're not talking to me tonight. I guess they're not used to YouTube. If we were still in the group, they would. But probably the biggest one is the notion of dating multiple people, right? So kind of dating in a rotation.
Well, see, I think that's okay. I tell my daughter that all the time. If you're not making a commitment, if I was single, I'd probably have a man for every night of the week, because I ain't trying to commit to nobody. But dating to me is not sleeping with you. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, right. And that needs to be clear. But I'm just saying, for most people that were in my circle, you date one person and it does work out, you date the next person.
I think that's stupid.
Now it's like, well, it's a numbers game. Well, especially if you look at it from a numbers game, it is. You spent 6 months to a year, and now you're starting over again, instead of saying, wow, like you said, let me get to know several people, and then
elimination. It'll make. Yeah, I tell my daughter that all the time. I don't understand it. And then you see the negativity and the violence that comes from those kind of relationships. He's cheating on me. You can't cheat on nobody you ain't married to. The most you can do is lie. Okay. Well, how do you cheat? Where's the commitment there?
If you're committed and you said we're dating exclusively, I'm not seeing anybody else.
Oh yeah, well, that's what Tiffany tells me. I just don't believe that crap. I mean, if you get to that point, but generally that's not what happens. You just assume because we going out together, I can't go out with nobody else.
That's the assumption, right?
No, I'm not. Nope. It wouldn't be for me.
I think the thing is being clear. And I was just telling somebody that earlier today. And that's something that I've seen consistent across generations. And I'm trying to convince women that that's the truth. If a man wants to be in your life, he wants you to be in his life, he's going to be clear about that. There's not going to be anything he's going to have you guessing. He's going to say, hey, I'm not seeing anybody else. I don't want you to see anybody else. Are you good with that? Are we there?
Oh,
you know, I really don't. I was listening to a young guy today on this podcast, and he said he told the girl when they went on the first date, he said, I'm a husband. I'm not a boyfriend. And I'm not looking for a girlfriend. I'm looking for a wife. So I'm dating with intention. Now, she had the opportunity at that point to say, what? That ain't me. I'm not ready for that. Or I'm great. Because there was clarity. And I was like, a man who's mature enough to have a full-fledged relationship is going to be able to articulate that. And you're not going to be, I said, if you have to ask, what are we doing? There's your answer. Nothing.
You have to ask, right?
If you got to ask. Okay. Then you are, so I think it's like I said, an age of making assumptions that you can't make. somebody takes you to meet their parents. I had to tell people that don't mean anything except they took you to meet their parents.
But see, back in my day, that meant, well,
I know, but back in my day too. These are the things I'm telling you that has changed.
But here's a couple of things. Back in my day, you couldn't go out with nobody unless they had met your parents.
Exactly. Would you say that again?
You couldn't
one of the Gary girls.
You couldn't go out with them unless they had met your parents. In fact, you couldn't even have friends. Your parents knew all your friends. And
come in here so I can see come off that porch. You're not nobody picking you up. You gotta come to the door.
Honk the horn? I don't think so. In fact, my father wouldn't even let me go out with a boy who had a car.
See,
because he said
that was dangerous. Yeah,
and go to the drive-in. He said that was cheap hotel fare.
Yep.
First time I ever went to a drive-in, I was with my husband. And I was so excited. I was just looking all around like, wow, look at that. But they didn't
outside. I'm outside.
They didn't play. No. But now these boys are just rolling up, who tooting the horn, and folks is running out. You don't know where they going, who they with. I had to, if I left the house and my parents were not home for some reason, I had to leave a note telling them what I had on.
Wow, I believe it.
My mother said, because, they ain't going to come and say, well, what was she wearing? Oh, I don't know. I have on a blue skirt and a white blouse and blue shoes. If that note wasn't on the door, when they got, next time I couldn't go. Okay.
You were going out for a while, right? You leave your keys right there.
Right. So I don't know how to navigate this world because it's so different. And I have these conversations with my granddaughter who's 22 years old, and she's always, oh, you're just old. You're just old, and don't nobody do that anymore. Well, maybe they should, because look at the shape the world is in.
Right. It's not working out very well.
Right.
It's not working. I remember, oh my gosh, she sounds like me. I remember telling my mother that I don't remember what year, but it was the 80s. And I know it had to be before I got engaged, before I got married, and I was about to call this guy. And she says, "You gonna call somebody on my phone?" And I said, "Mama, it's the 80s. I ain't gotta wait for no boy to call me. You can call a boy. That don't mean something's wrong with you." And she says, "Okay, keep living." And I have found out what she's saying is true. Not to say that I can't ever pick up a phone, but when I pick up the phone first or initiate a conversation, it never goes well. It never goes well. That's just like, oh, okay.
Your mother's in my age group.
Put forth any effort at all.
Your mother's in my age group. You didn't call boys because even when Tiffany was coming, well, it's okay to call them. I'm like, why? Why are you chasing them? I mean, but we didn't do that. You couldn't call no boy.
We're equal. Y'all got
we didn't call no boy. My mother said they interested, they'll call you. Exactly. There you go.
And it's still true. And it's still true. And anybody want to dispute it, you can meet me in the inbox. Challenge me. Because it's true. I've done the research. Okay? It's true. It's true. Young, old. Another thing my mother used to say, and this is not politically correct, so I'm going to paraphrase it. It's not politically correct the way I say it. So this is no bearing on her. But her when she was a young teacher, and she's like I said, a retired teacher. If you were retired, how many summers now? We always counted by summers. I think this was her 18th summer that she's been retired. So that's a blessing, right? But she talked about when she was a young teacher and she taught special education. And she said, would never fail that every year there would be at least one girl that'd be pregnant. And when they would find out who the boy was, it would be somebody with some very severe challenges. Maybe he didn't have language, or he lacked hearing, could be visually impaired. And so she's like, certainly, if a young man who has trouble speaking or hearing or walking can make his way to a girl, then I know a man with all his faculties can let you know he's interested in you. And that stuck with me. And I said, that's why somebody deaf and blind.
I love that.
Deaf and blind. If he can get a girl, and let the woman know, it's certainly a man that can talk and see can do the same. And I was like, wow. I mean, I couldn't even dispute that.
Right.
I was like, okay, case closed. I was like,
Right. I love that. That's funny. That's funny.
I'll share that with a lot more. Well, you know, he's really busy. Well, he's, you know, he's got a lot. He's kind of shy. He's been hurt. And if all of that is a problem for him, you need to leave him where you got him. I got one more question, and then we're gonna get off of here because I could be on here all night with you. But if you could do anything different, what would you have done?
I don't think I would have married so young. Okay. Because there are certain life stages that you have to go through and certain things that you have to do. So by my marrying so young at 18, I missed that life stage of hanging out with the girls and, you know, doing all that ripping and running in the streets and everything. But I still had to live that out. And so I lived it out after I was married. I had a child. And that put a severe strain on my marriage. But again, I was married to the right man. So, and he talked to my mother, and my mother's, because he was ready to go. Listen, I would leave home sometime on Saturday evening, you know, hanging out with my girls, and I wouldn't get home till Sunday afternoon. Okay. When I tell you I was hanging out. They knew me at the bars, and I was hanging out. Sometimes
you living your best life.
I was living my best life. I was having a ball. I had a 3-year-old kid at home with her dad. I was like, you keep him right. Sometimes I'd get so drunk, I'd just call him and say, I can't come home because I can't drive. I would be too drunk to drive. And sometimes I wouldn't even know whose house. He said, where are you? I don't know. I'll be home tomorrow.
Okay. Well, no GPS and trackers then.
We had all of that, you know. So I lived that out, and he let me go through it.
Change.
He let me do what I needed to do until the streets had no more appeal for me and I was back home. So that would be, I would say, I don't think it's wise to get married too young. I think I was too young, but that would be the only regret I would have at this point, because actually being married has never kept me from doing anything I wanted to do.
Wow.
He's never, you know, when I decided to go, because I didn't finish school, I got pregnant with the second child. We came back to Chicago, you know, started a regular get up and go to work life. Yeah. And then Tiffany was born, and, you know, it was the family life. And then when I decided I want to go back to school and complete my bachelor's, he said, okay, go ahead. And then I wanted to do my master's. He was like, okay, what do you need me to do to help you? And then when I started the doctoral program, he took over everything. He took over the shopping. He took over the laundry. He took over everything so that he could facilitate my completing that doctoral degree. Okay.
Wow.
And so he never, you know, if I say I wanted to go out with my girlfriends, I wanted to travel with my girlfriends, like, go ahead, have a good time. So, you know, I make concessions because I am married and I respect my marriage. And so there's some things I'm not going to do because I have a husband, and like I want him to respect me, I'm going to respect him. So I don't give him any reason to think I'm doing anything other than what I say I'm doing. Okay. But that would be the one thing I would regret, having married so young.
And that kind of reiterates what you were saying earlier about the importance of knowing yourself. Right. And knowing yourself, who you are for real, and like you said, what you really want, which you can't answer until you know yourself.
And you can't answer that at 17 and 18. In fact, I think we handicap our kids because we're expecting them at 18, 19 years old when they come out of high school know what they want to do with the rest of their life.
Yes.
Really? My undergraduate degree and 35 years of work experience is in business and management. And I realized I absolutely hated it. So I was 50 when I switched to social work.
Wow. Isn't that something?
And so, but I never regretted it. You know, but how do you know at 18 and 19? So I tell them, do what you feel, what feels good for you now. And if you need to change it 10, 15 years down the road, change it. But see, we weren't taught that. We were taught get out of school, get you a good government job, stay on it till they give you a gold watch, and that was the message. Yep. But it harms people. It harms people.
Stability over joy, right? Stability over.
And so I would say that to young people. My grandson, for instance, he's 28 now, and although he's met a young woman, he said he thinks she's the one he wants to spend the rest of his life with. Okay. But they've had some challenges. And so what he said was, I need to work on Wesley before I marry someone.
That's it.
So to have that kind of wisdom, because I want to work things out with Wesley. I don't want to bring these problems into a marriage. So they're cooling it for right now, you know. That's the kind of things we need to be teaching our kids, to know who you are, where you're going, what you want to do, because he's got a 10-year plan. He got a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and it might change, but at least he's thought about it. See if she's on board with that. If she going some other direction completely, then you know, okay, this ain't the one, you know. So, but I think those are the kind of things you need to take into consideration when you're planning to get married. But I don't think you know that until you're 30 or 40. I really don't. So I think,
and I've said that, especially in this generation, and you know that from social work, if adolescence has been stretched to 25, but you're saying we're really not even considered an adult till 25. Like I said, 30 to me is kind of that sweet spot. You lived a little bit.
Done a few things.
Discover who you are, separate and apart from your parents. Like I said, I remember, like I said, that same struggle, you know, being married, and still, if we do this, what will my parents think? Well, how can you invest in a marriage if you're still worried about this entity over here? You know, or like I said, still want to be with your friends and still keeping up with the Joneses and all of those things, which is a part of being 20 years old, part of being in your 20s. So I agree with you. I think in this day and age, below about 30, I don't know. I wonder. And my son and his wife, they seem to be doing pretty good. Hey, y'all. You know,
well, that's good.
They're going on 6 years, and they went in before they were 30. But I think, like I said, the quality of their dating, the level of how much they knew themselves, and the ability to have, like I said, these conversations that you're talking about. What is it you really want to do? How are you going to go about doing that? And like I said, does the intersection of your life and my life make sense?
And it's good to have some people to talk to. I mean, I read stuff all the time talking about don't talk to people about your marriage. Yes, do talk to people about your marriage. I'm not saying talk, intimately, details and all that kind of stuff, but you do need people you can talk to because you don't know it all. And Rudolph and I say all the time, what we do may not work for you, but it might give you some little thought that maybe you could do something like that, give you a little foundation, give you a little clue. So because we need the wisdom of others, the elders, so to speak. We have turned into the elders of the village. I don't know how it happened because I still feel myself as young, but I am honored and pleased to be considered an elder of the village, and that people come to us because they think we have something to offer. We recognized about 15 years ago that our marriage was bigger than us. It had really become a ministry. And so we accepted that, it must be what God wants from us. We don't understand it. I still don't understand it, but it must be what God wants from us. And so we do have something to give. It may not be 100% for you, but you have to talk to others. That's one of the things that drives people crazy, is that sense of isolation. No one will understand. I have no one to talk to. I'm the only one going through this. And when you understand, when you talk to people and understand others have had the same, there's nothing unique under the sun. They had the same problem, the same issues, and might be able to help you get through, then you can heal.
Absolutely. The opportunity is, you just answered my next question. I was about to ask you, what do you think the legacy of your marriage is? And you just said that, like you said, to be able to share with others and let them know that
you can do it.
You can do it. You can get through it. First of all, if you acknowledge what it is, right? But like I said, sometimes just being able to talk it out and hear it for yourself, you're like, wow, this kind of sounds crazy now that I'm saying it out loud. It's probably not as big a deal as I thought. But the most important piece is, like I said, knowing that you're not alone. Because
Well, in all the therapeutic modalities, I believe that group therapy is the most helpful. And that's where you find out you are not alone. So it works in, substance abuse. It works for other mental health issues. When people find out that they are not the only one going through what they're going through, it starts the healing process. Because that isolation and that sense of nobody will understand, or shame, or whatever stigma, whatever it is that's keeping you from talking about it, internalizes it and makes you physically ill as well as mentally ill. And so when you can come and say, you know what, I want to work on my marriage, but I don't know. And you say, we having problems with ABC. And like, girl, let me tell you how you can handle this. You're like, oh, you've been through this too? Wow. A big burden is lifted from your shoulders.
Immediately, almost.
Immediately. I'm not the only one. So, that's why I think we're so transparent, because we've been through anything you probably name. We've done the mental health thing with me, with our daughter. We've done caring for elderly parents. We've been job loss, living without income. We've been, you name it, we just about been through it. So, it doesn't, I don't believe that God gives you anything, any knowledge that's for you. It's to be shared. What does it good? Just keep it. Well, what does that mean? I think whatever God gives us, he gives us to be shared with others. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is what brought me here to this platform, saying when your pain can become your passion, right? You got to pass it on. You got to pass it on. And so that's why I said all of the life experiences I've had, I'm like, there needs to be a space for people to talk about those things and not have shame and not have judgment, and know that you can make it. You can survive. You can be okay. You can get through it. And you don't have to do that alone. Last question, I promise. Do you have friendships been a part of your support system? Like, have you had married friends? Do you think that makes a difference for people to have?
I think that makes a difference.
That's also like-minded.
Yeah, I think having married friends, I've been at Trinity 40 years or so, and I've been in a lot of ministries and done a whole lot of things. Without any question, the married couples ministry is the best ministry I've ever been in at Trinity. And that is because there are no hidden agendas. There are no little I's and big U's or whatever that is. It's just folks trying to figure out how to make my marriage work. And so I think that, so we have marriage builders about whatever we've had them about infidelity, how to survive that. We've had you name a topic that could come up in a marriage. We have marriage builders about it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, within we have small prayer groups. Now there are 5 couples in my prayer group, and we meet virtually every Sunday night at 8:00. Every group has their own little time. We've been doing this for 12 years now.
Wow. Okay.
So we have formed a real bond that helps us stay together. Because one couple, like Sunday, one of the husbands was saying, well, she's doing so and so and so, and it's really bothering me. Well, 10 years ago, he didn't have anybody to say that to. He didn't have anybody to say that to. Now he's got us, and we can say, okay, have you tried doing this? Have you tried doing this? And you had tried doing this. And by the time we finished the call, she was saying, okay, I could see where maybe I should have done this differently. The group, we're not gonna go be telling their business nowhere. The group, that's trust. We trust each other. And so in addition to our prayer group, we get together 3 or 4 times a year where we have outings. We go out to dinner. We've been to plays. We've been to bowling. We've been, you name it. We just go and have fun together. So I think it's really important to have married couples who are like-minded. And you're all on about the same goal, how to make my marriage work. There's nothing wrong with I have a lot of single friends. Most of my friends are single. They've been married, divorced, widowed, whatever. So that's okay. But you do need those men. So especially, I think, when you're younger.
Okay.
Younger couples in their 20s still trying to maintain a relationship and hang out with their unmarried 20-somethings, they're going to be in trouble.
Because you're not solid yet.
You're not solid yet. When you're trying to hang out with them, they can hang out all night. You're supposed to go home. At some point, you got to say, I got to cut this. I got to go home. You can't stay out all night, like maybe they can. So I think, yes, you need to get some married people, y'all on the same page, y'all about this, just trying to make it. You all trust each other. I think that's critically important.
Okay, that's good. I've said that even with people choosing their single friends, especially when folks are choosing bridal parties. I try to tell people, choose folks who are going to stand in the gap for you and pray you back into your marriage. Not something, girl, you ain't got to deal with that. Ain't nowhere in the world I deal with that. Who she got? Nobody. Because miserable. Now you come back over here, we can be hanging out like we used to.
That's funny.
The people who are standing at that altar with you, young people, do you hear me? The people who are standing at that altar with you should be people who are going to help you secure
and I don't think
your marriage.
I don't think people think about that. They just choose their best friend and
they picking it
boy. Come on, yeah.
They're making these vows. These need to be people saying, I heard what you said, and I'm gonna hold you both to that. I said it to the parents. The last the first wedding I performed, and I said, even for the parents, this unity ceremony is not just these candles, it's saying that you're committed to their marriage as well. That when they come and they sit on your couch and they tell you, you go, oh, I hear you. Is he beating you? Is she beating you? Wonderful. Let's pray. Go home. Okay. You want me to pray with you? Because I'm definitely going to pray for you and those friends as well. So like I say, single, married, like you said, like-minded, that you love me enough to respect the covenant that I've made with this person, and you're going to encourage me in that. So this is great. This is great. Do you have anything closing that you want to leave people with? Anything that we maybe didn't touch on or you want to emphasize before we?
I don't know. I think I've covered everything. I think all I can say is marriage is not easy. And I think that's a takeaway I try to give everyone. I always say, think about Tina Turner. What's love got to do with it? Not a damn thing.
Nothing.
No, absolutely nothing. Because you can love a person to death, but you have to like them as well.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people don't understand the difference.
And there is one.
And so you have to like them as well as love them. In fact, I think you have to like them more than you love them. Love will grow, but like is something that comes from their character, their morals, those are the things that you like about them. You can love a lot of things. That
like, so that like is the part that maybe keeps you.
And I think so. So you have to like being with them. You have to like being around them. You like being in their presence. You like, look forward to them. I like Rudolph being in the house, even though we're not in the same room. I like knowing that he's here.
That he's there.
And at a moment's notice, anything can happen. And all I have to do is just yesterday, I think it was, day before now, we call each other on the intercom. Because like I said, he's in the basement. I'm on the second floor. It's a lot of stairs in this house, right?
Okay.
So he called me to see what time we were having dinner. And I had lost my voice. And I was saying, something happened. I can't hardly talk. And he said, well, what is it? I said, I don't know. Well, before I can hang up the phone, he was there in the room.
Wow.
What happened? I'm like, I think it's just a frog in my throat, whatever. He was so concerned. He was going to get here, gargle with this, so he'd do that.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I like that. I mean, sometimes it gets on my nerves, it's like, I had a hip replacement in April.
Oh my.
And talking about between him and Tiffany, but this man, I was like, Lord have mercy. But it's because he cares for me.
Yeah, that's a
And
blessing.
some people don't have that at all.
They don't, married or single.
Married or single. And so I have to step back and say, he loves me. Yeah. He cares about me. He wants me to be all right. So I think those are the kind of things you have to look for. And understand again that marriage is not easy. It's not 50-50. Sometimes it's 100 and 0. Sometimes it's 60-40.
Yes.
Sometimes, but you have to be able to give in order to get.
Oh my goodness. She said you got to be able to give in order to get. That's good. That's a good closing right there. And it kind of brings everything together that you said. It takes trust. It takes the willingness to accept change over time and adapt as each of you change, but be committed to the entity of your marriage, not even so much each other, but what it is we've committed to do. What is it that we need to do to stay together? That's what I should have opened up with, was Al Green, let's stay together.
Let's stay together, right?
That just came to me. Okay, I should have had the Reverend on there. But like I said, you hit some important points. And in the chat, somebody is saying this has just been such a blessing for this 51-year-old, somebody who's in the chat. She's like, this is exactly what she needed to hear. You gave us some real good nuggets, some things to chew on. I'm gonna go back and look. I'm like, some things I just want to sit and marinate. I'm gonna press pause and just
well, thank you so much.
See what comes off the screen. I really appreciate your time. I wish I had an applause. I super appreciate your time, and like I said, continued blessings to you and Mr. Brown and all your date nights and all of that stuff. I just love it. And so I want to thank everybody who's been listening and watching and who will watch the replay. If you want to find me on social media, you can find me on Facebook under Kimberly King, as well as the Complete Suite LLC. You can inbox me. If you need an appointment to talk about your life or your relationship, because I am the relationship renovator. So you can hit me up here or hit me in the comments here on YouTube. I would love to talk with you, sit on the couch and unpack what's going on with you and how we can make it better. Thank you so much, Arlene.
You are welcome. All right. Love you.
Love you too, dear. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.